2019. Welcome to GSL Season 3. Code S. Reversal.
Welcome back, everybody. We're here at the GSL Code S, and we're going to go to Keen versus Innovation. We already had a pretty cool PvP. I'm really surprised and delighted to see that Creator played so well against, of all people, Classic.
Yeah. I mean, Creator put out some very solid games. Fundamentally, they looked very good, and strategically, it was awesome. So, congrats to him. He deserves to move on, I guess.
Yeah.
Classic started to pull it together and almost made a miraculous comeback in that last game. But, anyways, he's in the loser match, and that's danger zone right there.
It is. Also, Classic overall just not playing as well as I think we're used to. I don't know if the fact that he has to go into the military soon and might not even be able to finish his season is a factor here. I don't want to psychoanalyze too much, but just something to note, a little asterisk there. Now we have Innovation versus Keen. Now, I said earlier in our PvP, there's one clear player who's supposed to advance. I'll say that again in this matchup as well. Innovation is the favorite here. But we've already had upsets today. Again, I think I'm right. I think Innovation's supposed to win here, but let's see.
Keen is not bad TBT.
But he's a good player overall. I mean, there's a reason why he's been in, what is it, 19 or 18?
He's been in a
GSL
lot of
Code
GSLs, a lot. But, yeah, Innovation is in good shape right now. I know that for the last couple of years, there's been spottiness for him where there wasn't as much before. But he's definitely showing pretty good form, so expecting that victory.
Game 1 will be on Thunderbird, and that is just loaded up. This is Keen versus Innovation.
Africa S2. Keen. Reciprocity. Innovation.
Big showing here for Innovation today.
Yeah, he is a popular player, no doubt. Has been for a very long time. Innovation showing much faster gas here, and immediately into a second gas, so going to be a little bit tech heavy here in the opening. Yeah, now we wait and see.
Good audience showing here today. Always a different crowd here on Saturday afternoons here.
Are you saying weekend mornings brings in different people than weeknight?
I am. I'm going out on a limb here and saying it. Although some of the people have actually been here for both of those. I'm recognizing some people.
Yeah,
I'm good at recognizing the backs of heads.
Yeah.
Because of where we cast this from. So.
Oh, no, don't turn around. We can't recognize you.
Yeah. That's your face. I have no idea who you are. So, yeah, and, in case you guys are wondering why we have this Saturday afternoon cast, it's so that we can get a good time for the North American scene. It's their evening time there. Trying to get all the little regions covered so you can get some live StarCraft too, and then you can watch the VOD the other times.
That's right. If you're really hardcore, you just have a rotating sleep schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So a very quick command center here from Keen, going into his factory right afterwards. There's Innovation, continue on that tech. That's an interesting place for a Reaper, isn't it?
It is. Let's see what's actually going to be happening here. Innovation, by the way, has thrown down his command center here, albeit later than Keen's. Now, we've had some pretty cool little poke-ins with super early game pushes here. Do you think there's a possibility of that? If you get a Raven, tank, there's several mixtures of units.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of ways to try to do this. Sometimes it's with a medevac coming in and dropping and hitting somewhere, and then you're trying to hit the front. Are there any opportunities that you see there for Innovation?
Well, since he is making the Hellions and And Reapers, there is, like, he could have poked, but that time has kind of passed. You can see him setting up more defensively here, just in case of, Cyclone or would have come across the map. But I mean, even if you try to poke, the map is really long. You're going up a ramp. We see that Keen has already made a bunker as well, so it's like highly defensive. Can't really imagine anyone doing each other damage at this point in the game yet.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to get some flying units out there.
Here comes that first Raven coming out here. I was talking more about like a later on little push or little attack in there, not like trying to run in so much and kill stuff. But we'll have to see if that does come into play here, because Ravens are becoming more and more interesting as StarCraft 2 continues on. The little stuff we've seen already. I mean, we could talk about yesterday where we saw, actually, sorry, not yesterday, 2 days ago when we saw the Ravens come in and chuck down auto turrets to then kill off Stim, which for us was just a complete mind-blowing experience of, like, of course that's another thing you can do here.
Yeah.
I've got my fingers crossed for maybe something like that coming up here as well.
It would be cool to see some very creative attacks going on. Not sure exactly what we'll end up seeing. Keen is going for a very fast third command center here as well, whereas Innovation continues to build up his tech. So if someone is to do one of those more technical, interesting attacks, it certainly will be Innovation. So Keen is going to have to wait a bit to really get his macro rolling and get anything together that could do an attack.
Yeah. Here comes Keen's Hellion now going into the main. And you can see Innovation was ready for a drop, but this Hellion does come in here more scouting than anything else. Sees the Raven, taken out by the Cyclones.
He was totally ready for anything coming in from the side. Ooh, another factor here for Keen, so he's decided to go mech. Not a big surprise. This guy was mixing in mech for quite some time, even against Protoss, before the mech actually caught on.
Yeah, mech's always kind of been in and out of StarCraft 2. There's periods where it's very trendy in certain matchups and it's very strong, and then it'll either get figured out or phased out of the meta.
That was quite a nice scan by Innovation, by the way. He saw exactly the moment that Keen had verified that he was going for mech play, so definitely useful. We'll see where Innovation goes with that information.
We had games in this season already where players were playing pretty well but didn't fully identify that there was an unusual unit composition that was being teched out. So it's good to see him get that in there right away. And a very passive game to start things off. Both players much more interested in showing what they've got in, late game here. We've got the 3 factories coming down now. Meanwhile, Innovation staying on bio here as we see Stim coming up as well. And Innovation, versus a mech player, usually the bio player with tanks is able to do a little bit more on the map. Coming out and trying to get a little bit of control. Mech always takes, and there's some exceptions since the the Cyclone being incorporated into StarCraft 2. There's been a little bit of a change to this. We saw Gumiho especially express this in some of his games, but generally the bio player is usually able to do something, and that's what we're going to see right here. Now there's scans coming down here. The tanks are actually behind the bunkers, so Innovation should get some pot shots off on this bunker of Keen's right now.
Yeah, I don't think he can do too much more than this because of the layout of the map. If you try to push it too much, it's like, what are you doing?
Well, it'd be so ambitious to try to push up a ramp with Stim against a mech player. But he does kill the bunker, doing a little bit here and there.
This position from Innovation, like maybe the Ravens can help him break. That's going to be what he tries. And look at that.
Disabling on the Ravens.
Yeah, kind of a big deal there. Tons of disables going off on both sides, but Innovation won't break this. No way, no how.
No.
In fact, he wasted all his Ravens there. So this was a bit foolish. You're doing Raven against Raven. You're kind of trying to just bust. And back when Interference Matrix first came out, we saw a lot of situations where you could bust the mech player with those disables. But you see, Keen's well practiced with this strategy. He knows to disable the Raven and let his Vikings clean up. So that was, it was like Innovation was almost going for a cheap win. He's like, oh, I hope you don't know how to defend this. So kind of weird.
Yeah, it was a little bit of what I was talking about earlier. Will he try to do something fancy with a little push to start things off? And he did try that, but yeah, it did not work at all. And frankly, losing those Ravens like that was the big tech unit you were leading up to. And so to lose those assets like that is pretty bad.
Well, Innovation is adding a bunch of barracks and continuing forward with this bio play, but you know, you're kind of limited. Like, you can look at this as the mech player, and I expect to see a lot of scans out of Keen checking tech, because if you stay on this like Bioforce, what you need to do as the mech player is just kind of watch for base trade type situations, right? If you're going heavy bio, it's like, okay, yeah, maybe he'll fly in with medevacs, maybe he'll wait for me to move and try to get me out of position or while I'm unsieged. But what you're really kind of going to want to look for is switches into Sky Terran.
Right.
That's where it can get really scary. The bio player can generally expand a little bit more, get a really big economy going, and almost seamlessly go into massive, you know, Vikings and like Liberators to push down the mech.
Yeah, you sort of move past that mech part of the game.
And you can see Innovation starting air attack. So that kind of points towards that's what he wants to do.
And as time passes, Keen's going to continue to muster a pretty scary mech army. A lot of this comes down to, in mech versus bio, I mean, comes down to raw power versus mobility. You know, it's very hard to engage the mech army, but the mech army is slow and cumbersome to move, specifically because of the way the siege tank operates. It needs to get into siege mode, shell stuff down, and then when it needs to move, it's got to unsiege, which takes an animation, then get to the right location, then get set up. Whereas Stim, Bio, Marines, and there are tanks in that army too, but usually what you do is you set up some type of position, and then you look for an opening elsewhere or try to flank them. But Stim Bio is just much more agile. But again, if it ends up fighting directly into the siege tanks, and the siege tanks are in siege mode, the Bio is obliterated.
Yeah, it really is. So it's something he needs to look out for.
And that's why we're going to see this Sky Switch coming up here.
Yeah, he's adding the starports right now, so he's definitely getting ready for it. The most important part of this is making sure you have more Vikings than your opponent. It can become a little bit of a Vikings arm race, because as soon as you have more Vikings, you own the skies, and you can go like Liberators with range and basically push into everything, as long as you have enough siege tanks to, you know, make sure that your opponent can't just rush in with ground units.
One other concept that's worth offering as well is that when you own the skies, your tanks are stronger because you can actually just fire as long as you have spotters there, air spotters.
Yeah.
Which makes things a lot easier. Granted, you have a lot of scans. It's just a lot more mechanical output than if you can simply get your air army over a location and then have your siege tanks able to pick off whatever's in that area.
Yeah, and again, if you don't have that, those air units, like, yeah, you use scans for a little bit, but eventually Liberators can really turn the tides. We even sometimes see BCs in that late game, like with TY versus Marver the other day.
Right.
So both sides getting into some Liberators and their fusion cores, so we'll be seeing that range upgrade coming. More starports for Innovation, although Keen is adding them on.
And this is a great build-up to an epic TVT in the late game here.
Yeah.
Seems like Keen's going to try to occupy the top center here. TVT is a matchup that oftentimes operates based off where the no man's land is set up, and we're beginning to see that carved out here as the map is getting cut diagonally here.
1 Raven and 14 Vikings for Innovation, and then 12 Vikings for Keen. So Innovation does own the skies right now. He also has those Marines, which can add their firepower to it. So, you know, if they end up having a battle like that, it definitely does go to Innovation, who has already switched into Liberators. So I feel like he's playing this just right.
We're teching up further and further here. 3-3 is almost done now for Innovation. And eventually push is going to have to come to shove. They're both maxed out. Now, when you see the mech player setting Hellions out, that's going to happen pretty organically because you're always going to be mining more minerals at this phase of the game than gas, and you have all these factories, so you end up throwing out a lot of Hellions and trying to shoot them out onto the map, a lot of times suiciding them because you need to kill off workers. And there's nothing else you can do with those minerals, generally speaking.
Yeah, and killing
turrets,
workers is more powerful against a bio player than against a mech player generally, because they're less cost efficient. But anyways, a set of bio coming over here. This is actually Innovation, just trying to, you know, get something done with this bio force. He doesn't really need it that much, so if he can trade it reasonably, it's really worthwhile.
And 2 battle cruisers about halfway done. More command centers coming down, so we're going to have a lot more mules and the options for planetaries here.
Is Innovation about to have like 10 Liberators? I believe so.
I think he might be. He's got 5 or 6 making, right now.
Yeah, Keen keeps scanning things like bases instead of looking for that air army because he keeps adding battle cruisers. And like with Yamato, they do all right, but Vikings can kind of beat battle cruisers, so you have to be very careful about that. Really, it's the air armies are all about who has the Viking advantage and who can win that. And obviously Ravens can help out as well, so we've seen Corvid Reactor come up for Innovation. I just feel like Innovation's setting up for this better.
I think you're right. One thing as well is as much as we've seen battle cruisers dominate and super flashy play, especially from TY 2 days ago, the Vikings get the air shot off first. It's similar to the concept of the siege tank in siege mode, right? If anything is going to fight a group of siege tanks, you first have to factor in that the siege tanks will deal their damage before the opposing ground unit will deal theirs. And it's the same truth for Vikings. Vikings spray out missiles at an incredible range.
They have good damage, and they're actually pretty decent at kiting, so you can't really chase them down.
Right, and this is a very different concept than, for instance, what we've seen in TVZ with Corruptors, where Corruptors are supposed to be sort of the anti-air unit for Zerg, the air-to-air fighter. But, you know, with BCs, you can Yamato them, you can try to teleport away in a form of harassment. Here, because this is such a push-based matchup and map control matchup, it's harder to utilize battlecruisers in the same way. I'm not saying that the battlecruisers are a bad choice. It's just when faced with a large number of Vikings, it can be very problematic for the battlecruiser player.
So, Innovation right now setting up some interesting high ground positions here, but Keen is pushing forward like non-stop, right? He's trying to take all these spots in the middle. He's even opened up some of the mineral paths to walk through, sending his BCs out. I like this a lot, right? Like in the main battle, these won't be as useful, but with a move like this, first off, you know all the Vikings are going to have to reposition over here, but you can just warp out. Unless they get disabled, which